Hey friends, and thanks for joining me. My name is Mike Stoppa, and today we're going to talk about some hospital sales tips. Specifically, the goal here is to help you get best practices where you can consistently achieve your sales goals year after year. So this is part of our series called MedRep Tips, and I appreciate you joining me today. Let's get started. Tips that we're going to talk about today. These are just 10 tips that I've used to achieve hospital sales success. We're going to go each one of these in detail, so I'm not going to read them now, but we're going to try to go as in-depth as we can during the course of this particular video here. Now, this is obviously not a comprehensive list. There's many tips. I'm sure that you have tips that you could share with me, and if you do, I would love to know what those tips are. Please add a comment to this particular video here, or communicate with me when you get in touch with me. At the end of the video, I'll provide my contact information. And of course, if this video is helpful, I'd ask that you please share it with a friend or give it a thumbs up so that people can find the video as well too. So first off, why listen to me? So in terms of this particular video and why I might know a little bit about the topic, I've been blessed to be able to consistently beat sales quotas year after year. I've done that 14 out of my 16 years in pharmaceutical and biotech sales. I've been over 100% to goal, sometimes much higher than 100%. And I'm on a blessed streak right now where I've gotten an 8-year run where I've been over 100% to quota. What I'm showing you is typical of what I do, and my belief is that if you do these things, then you will also find success. So, presentation goals and limitations. I already mentioned one of the goals. I mean, ideally, the best case scenario is that you find solutions that you can use, just like I have, to be able to consistently achieve your goals every month, every quarter, every year. But at a minimum, if you take nothing else out of this presentation, I'm hopeful that you will at least get one. In fact, I'm actually confident that you will get at least one actionable tip, hopefully multiple ones, that you can use immediately to improve your sales results. As far as limitation of the presentation, I mean, these are kind of obvious, right? We only have so much time here, right? If you want to have a longer presentation for yourself or your organization, then contact me. Let's see if we can work together to make that happen. But for this particular purposes right now, we can't cover everything because of time. I also want to give due diligence to the phrase on the bottom where it highlights the fact that we need to make sure that we are compliant with all hospital system policies or our own company policies. I've served as the compliance liaison from the sales side for actually 3 sales divisions at one time with one of my organizations, and so I'm very well versed in the importance of remaining compliant with our corporate policies with various organizations, as well as with each individual system and hospital policies. You got to make sure that you're operating within that, because you want to make sure you maintain credibility and that you maintain your access to hospitals. And if you do something that's not within policy, you could very easily find yourself on the outside looking in at a hospital system, and that's going to be very negative for your hospital sales success. So remain compliant. All right, let's get started with tip number 1. And if you take nothing else from this video but just this one tip, this tip by itself will help you to consistently achieve your sales goals year after year if you apply it. And that tip is building relationships with KOLs. So again, I would love to go more in depth on this topic because it's so important. I've got another video kind of specifically about key opinion leaders, but for our purposes today, let's just give a broad overview. So a KOL is a key opinion leader. So that's somebody who has the ability to influence others. Now, how do you find key opinion leaders within hospitals? Well, you may have heard this saying. It's not my saying. I don't remember where I heard it from. But if you've seen one hospital, what that means is every hospital is different. And so key opinion leaders are going to be different at each hospital. Sometimes it could be a medical director, it could be somebody from C-suite, it could be a chief nursing officer. It kind of depends on your product, right? Whether you have a pharmaceutical drug or an infusion product or a medical device or capital equipment, it's going to obviously be different. But it's not rocket science, right? We don't have to make it more complicated than it needs to be. A key opinion leader is somebody who has the ability to influence others. So most likely that means it's somebody in a position of authority. And if you're just kind of starting out, I would look for the medical director, right? Or the chief nursing officer, or again, somebody who, depending on what your product is going to be able to influence people who are writing your product. So let's just stay with the medical director. Medical director of say, a critical care unit. So if the people that write your product, prescribe your product, are going to be the doctors of a critical care unit or the nurse practitioners or whatever it is in your state, then the medical director is going to be the person that's going to influence them. How is he going to influence them? He's probably going to tell them what to do, right? It could be based on protocols, or it could be based on what his own kind of best practices are. So why is it important to partner with them? Well, obviously, if they're going to influence your product inside the hospital, you kind of need to make sure that you're partnering with them so they can include and influence others to write your product. But it kind of goes beyond that. If we start thinking of the big picture and we want to have success here, another thing that your key opinion leader may be interested in, particularly if they're higher up within the hospital system, is research or marketing type relationships. So maybe they're interested in, especially if they're an academic center, building the research arm of their hospital, or if they're a community hospital that's really trying to advance and trying to form a partnership with another academic organization, maybe they can participate in some way. That can be a great way to bring a key opinion leader into the fold, particularly if they're not allowed for whatever reason to be a speaker aligned with your organization, or maybe they just don't want to be for whatever reason. Also, don't overlook the opportunity to partner your key opinion leaders with your marketing folks, your home office marketing folks. I've been able to do this with multiple organizations where I've been able to hook key opinion leaders up and develop them over time from a local key opinion leader into regional or national key opinion leaders who've worked within our marketing team to actually change the brand messaging of some of our products. And so there's a real opportunity there, and it's a real win-win. The next thing, of course, is when you're partnering with key opinion leaders, focusing on, we're going to talk about this concept of win-win, which I just mentioned, but we're going to talk about it over time throughout this video. Finding out what your key opinion leader's goals are. And again, if it's somebody higher up in an organization, they're probably very focused on patient outcomes, right? Now, that's obviously very big, especially as we get diminishing returns for reimbursement. Patient outcomes really can provide benefits related to patient outcomes, which I hope it would, based on clinical evidence, or it maybe saves the staff time, or whatever the case may be. You got to make sure that you communicate those benefits to the key opinion leader and the medical director, obviously, which we'll talk about in a moment, because that can help them to achieve their goals. So again, why would a key opinion leader want to partner with you? Well, there are various reasons why that could be. Key opinion leaders want to partner with you because it can help them from a competitive standpoint. If that hospital that they're a part of is involved in a setting where there are other hospitals around them, if you're in a metropolitan area and there's 2, 3, 4, 5 hospitals, they're all competing with each other. If your product can provide a benefit to the key opinion leader, it's going to help them to stave off competition or build their referral base. That's a win-win right there. You're helping them and they're helping you get more prescriptions. Again, like I said, maybe they want to build their brand in some way, the brand of the organization from a research standpoint or credibility standpoint, or maybe the key opinion leader, maybe he's a little bit older and he or she likes education, right? They want to be kind of a teacher. They want to teach the next generation. Well, that's a great way for you to be able to partner with them. Maybe they just like they want to build their personal brand. Maybe they're an up-and-comer and they want to build a name for themselves so they can continue to advance. I've had this happen multiple times throughout my career where I identified an up-and-comer and was able to get them into the fold from a key opinion leader standpoint, helped me build my own achieve my own organizational goals, but also help them achieve their own personal goals to build their personal brand so they can advance through the system as well too. Let's not forget, these people have their careers they're building too. And if you can understand what their goals are and help them achieve them, then you've really done some great work. And I think you should be proud of that. So that's the power of the win-win from a key opinion leader standpoint. And I try to be very transparent with key opinion leaders in that, look, I would love to understand what your goals so I can help you to achieve them where possible, and again, in a compliant manner. And then also, here's what my goals are. I'm trying to grow sales for appropriate patient types in this particular segment. I think it can provide real value to you because of these benefits, yada, yada, yada. Let's work together so we can help each other. That's a key opinion leader relationship that's going to be set up for success. And that is tip number 1. Our next tip is going to be to create and use effective business plans. So, I don't want to go through all of these in detail because, again, I've got other videos that are specifically about the concept of business planning, and I've been a regional trainer from a business acumen and a business planning standpoint. So I'd love to share more with you over time, but for our purposes today, we'll be relatively brief. Obviously, the business plan has to be smart. It's got to be built on goals that are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. I'm sure you're familiar with that concept. And certainly you know that the reason why we're doing business planning is because while we might be able to be successful occasionally without a plan, if we kind of just wing it, maybe if we get lucky with a formulary win or something like that, if we want to be successful over time, we really have to have specific written business plans. I believe Antoine Saint-Exupéry, or the guy who wrote The Little Prince, has a great saying, and I love this saying. It's called, "A goal without a plan is just a dream." So if you don't have a real plan, then your goals really are just dreams. We want to make those goals be realistic by having plans. So we want to be able to develop a business plan where we can use the power of analytics. We live in an age of analytics now, right? And these analytics could be related to customer relationship management software, various Excel spreadsheets, whatever kind of data that you're able to get your hands on from your company. If you can use that analytical data, you can discover hidden opportunities that you're going to be able to, kind of develop over time, especially if you work on, various projects, which a lot of hospital sales is kind of project management, right? You got a lot of little projects that you're working on. You can really set yourself up for long-term wins, and that comes from understanding the analytics. It also means that you need to go deep within each account, right? And of course, obviously we're limited on time, so we can't go as deep into every account as we might like, but certainly the accounts that you've identified as potential opportunities from the analytical data, you want to go deep into understanding those accounts, not just from a quantitative standpoint with the numbers, but also from a qualitative standpoint. And when you apply the other techniques I'm going to go over with you from a staffing standpoint, and then you get a chance to understand what's really happening in that account, you can develop a lot of qualitative information that could be related to competition or opportunities that are happening, or maybe new units that are being built, or maybe you see cranes outside because they're expanding the hospital. That type of qualitative information you can use as part of your business plan. You then want to be able to make forecast. What do you think is going to happen? Make some prediction. What's going to happen this month, this quarter, this year? Include those as part of your goals within your business plan, and then try to achieve those goals, obviously. But just as importantly, you have to develop what I call disaster plans. You may have an account right now that maybe it's up 10, 20, 100%. And if that's the case, hopefully you can ride that winner to even more success. But if something were to go wrong, maybe you lose formulary status at that account, or maybe another product somehow comes in and gets a contracting win, whatever the case may be. I mean, if you have to make a plan that if this account goes down, and hopefully you're understanding maybe why that's happening so you can take action to prevent it. But let's just say something did go wrong, your quota doesn't go down, right? Quotas never really go down, they only go up, and you're responsible for achieving those quotas. So you have to have plans in place if you lose business at one account, where you're going to make it out at another account or two or three, right? Your business plan obviously has to create actionable steps, and I think that's not rocket science, right? But I point that out because you really should be using your business plan every day to do some activity related to that plan, because you built this plan because you wanted to achieve a certain goal, and you wrote down what the actions were that you believe would achieve that goal. So you really need to do those actions. Document that you just create and give to your regional director or your VP and then never look at it again until you have a review. You should be using it every day. And I'm not trying to be preachy. I'm just trying to explain that this really is an opportunity for you to be able to achieve success if you use the business plan. I mean, if you put the time in to make it, why not use it? I already mentioned this, but number 8 is ride your winners. If you've got an account that's doing really well, man, ride that thing to success. I've had accounts that account helped me get so much success year after year after year, because I applied a lot of plans that you're seeing right here over time, and I was able to ride that winner even when business went down elsewhere. I could continue to develop that one account, which I built such a good relationship in, to really make up for accounts maybe where I lost business, because you're not going to always grow in every account in hospital sales. There are going to be accounts that are going to be up sometimes, and sometimes they're going to be down. But when you identify winners, you want to be able to continue to maximize that winner. If it's a high ROI opportunity for you to invest more time in it and more resources, then do it. It's an easy way to get low-hanging fruit. Go after that low-hanging fruit. Also say you should be creative with your business plans. Think outside the box. Don't just do what everybody else is doing. Come up with quality improvement projects. Come up with grassroots projects. Talk to your key opinion leaders, medical directors. Maybe there's something they're interested in that you could take that idea back to your home office marketing team or your research team. And again, in a compliant manner, maybe you can develop a win-win project that could be a long-term project that could help you achieve your goals. I've been involved in multiple multi-year projects that have led to sales success that I've included as part of my business plan. That's not just for myself, but also with other people within my region, and even extending on to the nation combination as well too. If you use business planning effectively and creatively, you can do the same. Tip number 3 is to create win-win-win partnerships, specifically with medical directors. Now, a medical director may also be a key opinion leader for you, but he or she may not be. There could be a particular reason why they aren't allowed to be a key opinion leader for you, particularly if they're part of an academic institution, or maybe they just don't have time to do that. But even still, if your product is going to be used within their unit, you need to make sure that you're developing a partnership with them. So what is a win-win-win partnership? Well, again, it's not rocket science. I didn't make this up, but I just love the way it works. So a win-win is where you understand what the medical director's goals are, and they understand what your goals are, and you work together so that you have a win-win outcome. But a win-win-win outcome is where there's a third party involved, and that third party in healthcare generally is the patients, right? So if you are helping your medical director to achieve their goals, and you're getting your goals achieved because you're getting more business, if that results in helping the community as a whole, then that's a win-win-win. And when we all are aware that our product and our relationship together help to achieve that, then there's going to be consistent and increased use of the product over time, which will help stave off competition and lead to long-term positive results. So medical directors, I call them part of the D suite. Now, not everybody agrees with this. Some people say that executive level sales within hospitals involves the C-suite, which it certainly does, right? I mean, obviously from a contracting standpoint, the C-suite is certainly involved, and we have other discussions about that. I've got a whole other video about contracting success, and some people say that the D-suite is the dominant personalities that are within the C-suite. Okay, that's fine. I like to think of the D-suite as the department heads, the medical director heads. They are kind of a suite that you need to sell with and sell through on their own, beyond just the C-suite. So for me, the D-suite is the medical director heads, right? Yeah, but that's just me. Okay, so we have to understand when we're selling to medical directors, what are the many hats that they're wearing, right? So a medical director may be involved in actual clinical practice still within the units, or they may, they probably have some relationship to clinical practice, but they definitely have administrative duties, staffing duties, various committees that they're a part of, research projects potentially. I mean, they've got a lot of things going on, right? Both internally and externally. They're under a lot of pressure. They've got budgetary pressure. They've got staffing pressure. They've got personnel issues. If you can alleviate that pressure in some way, then you need to make sure that you try to do that, right? So what are the opportunities for you to be able to help them, right? Well, again, I'm going to go back to this area of competition, because I think this is a real opportunity. A lot of people don't capitalize on it in hospital sales, or really even understand, especially if you're in metropolitan areas where there's multiple hospitals and they're all competing with each other. If you've got a unit, a medical director, maybe of the pediatrics unit or the cardiovascular unit or the women's center, one of these high-profile, high-dollar oncology units, right? And there's a lot of competition where patients have a choice to go to this hospital or that hospital. If you can help the medical director get a leg up on the competition by using your products to achieve better patient outcomes or whatever the case may be, that's a win-win-win, right? Another thing is, again, I mentioned this controlling cost. If your product in some way saves time or helps them to control their budgets in some way, or you can help them to identify the appropriate patient so they can use the product in the right way, especially if it's a high-cost pharmaceutical or a piece of capital equipment or medical device, they're going to be under a lot of pressure from the C-suite, right? The D-suite's under pressure from the C-suite. We got to alleviate that pressure. So if we can help the medical director to understand how to use the product appropriately, he can justify it to his bosses. And particularly when they're able to gain more patients and then have more money revenue coming in, then that makes the medical director look very good, and he might be able to achieve his own career goals. So there's the controlling cost. There is the benefits of protocol. In hospital sales, a lot of effort is paid now to identifying or achieving consistency of care, right? It's like when you go to McDonald's. You go to McDonald's in Florida or Ohio, you expect the burger to be the same. If you go to a hospital, you want to get good quality care. Medical director wants all of his doctors to be able to deliver good quality care. So if you can help the medical director to develop protocols that are appropriate for the use of their product, and that's going to involve in more consistent care, there's a real value to that, and you are providing value beyond just the product itself, right? So, and then of course the protocol, if your product is a part of that protocol, it leads to more consistent usage for you, right? I already mentioned this, but identifying the appropriate patients. I feel that if you want long-term success, you have to have credibility, that you've earned the right to ask for the business for your product. And you get that right by being consistent over time and helping them to identify the appropriate patient for your product. I've got another video particularly about sales of pharmaceuticals and biotechs. But the summary here is that you don't ask for the product to be used for every single patient that comes through the critical care units or wherever you're at in the hospital. You ask it to be used for the appropriate patient based on supporting clinical evidence. And when you do that, you gain credibility. But again, you also help them to identify the right patient that the product can be used on. You set them up for success so that when they do use the product, they're going to have a greater chance of success. It won't work every time. We know that's not realistic, but it will work more often than not, hopefully. And then you're going to be able to help them get success. They're going to help their patients. They're going to justify the cost, and everybody wins. Also, these medical directors have educational goals. They need to continue to develop, especially in the age of competition where there's a lot of staff turnover. There is various levels of competency within the staff. If you can provide disease state education, non-branded education, and also education about your product to help the staff become more well-versed to be able to understand how to use your product to better care for their patients, then you're going to help the medical director meet her educational goals to improve the quality of care her unit can deliver. And again, this all relates back to the bottom outcome, which is the most important of all, and that is improving patient outcomes for patients. This is why healthcare exists, right? To help the patients. You want to be a part of that team, and you can become a part of that team by creating a win-win power behind academic centers. We're going to go through this list here and talk about why academic centers matter and how you can kind of work within them. But if you're involved in hospital sales in any way, you've probably at one point run into the challenge of dealing with academic centers. And maybe you've given up in trying to work with academic centers. I hope that's not the case, because if you can break in with academic centers, you can achieve some really great results, again, that can help you consistently get success over time. So why do academic centers matter? Well, quite simply, it's because they have the ability to influence others. Whether they influence others from a community hospital standpoint or at academic organizations or meetings, academics, research, right? All of these things add up to academic center influence, right? And there's a lot of credibility, because a lot of times these clinical evidence and evidence-based medicine is developed first at academic centers. And so we have to make sure that we are tapping into our ability to partner with them. So again, you probably already know this, but an academic center versus the community hospital, right? So an academic center is usually associated with a university in some way, right? Think University of Florida is partnered with various academic centers. Most of them around the country have some hospital associated with them. As opposed to a community hospital, which is really not necessarily a teaching hospital. You're going to find medical students and fellows. The next crop of doctors are really going to go through the academic center rotations. And then they develop over time. Maybe either they stay in academia or they go out to the community hospitals. So kind of the academic centers feed the community hospitals, both from a knowledge standpoint and from a staffing standpoint. So what are the opportunities to break in with them? Well, first and foremost, it's educational standpoint. If you can help them to meet their educational goals, or you can even deliver those types of presentations, most likely an academic center is going to want non-branded disease state type education. But once you break in there, you may eventually, depending on the rules of the hospital, be able to present branded education about your product as well, too. Academic centers are really the breeding ground for research and grants, who are going to be people that are going to study the use of your product. Not necessarily going to involve you on the sales side from a compliance standpoint. You could be the liaison to get that ball rolling. If they express a need to want to do some sort of research, you can connect them with the appropriate folks at your organization. And then long term, the research they conduct may lead to a positive outcome where you can parlay that into long-term sales success, both at the institution as well as beyond, right? There's opportunities to do various displays or grand round type education at the academic centers. You can work with the fellows who are the up-and-coming, doctors of the next generation. So it's important to kind of partner with them. There are various quality improvement projects that you can do. population health, where we have this whole community now that's involved in kind of improving outcomes over time. That involves academic centers, community hospitals, the whole integrated delivery network, and really the community as a whole, right? And academic centers are kind of a hub that's a part of that, right? So there really is a lot of power within academic centers. This topic is very broad and beyond our purposes today, but my point in bringing it up is we cannot overlook the value of understanding that there is a real need, and I would say an urgent need, to know that it's more than just the prescribers at the hospital that matter. There is real power within the staff, not just from an access standpoint, right? You can't get into the hospital if you can't get past the gatekeeper, right? But because they can provide value to you in identifying patients that can lead to more, business for you. So it's more than just the prescribers, right? If you know the person at the front desk, or you know the person who is at the head of the unit, right? The beginning of the unit, right? Or the secretary, the administrative people for the various doctors or medical directors, they're going to help you to get access, right? And without access, you can't do anything in hospital sales, right? You're always going to be visiting the medical arts building instead of actually getting into the hospital, which is where the real business is done. But the staff has the power for prescription potential, right? A nurse who's working at the bedside of a patient, who identifies that the patient is not doing well on their current medication, and who knows, if you've educated the nurse on your product and the benefits of your product, that nurse can tell the doctor who's rounding next, hey, maybe this patient I notice isn't doing well here. I think that other product that Mike has might be an opportunity. What do you think, right? So even if the nurse doesn't prescribe, the nurse can help identify the patient. And even if she as a nurse is not in the position to advise the doctor, doesn't feel comfortable at the doctor recommending the product, just pointing out that the patient's not doing well and maybe the next step of action may need to be taken, the doctor can refer to the protocol, which hopefully that next protocol step involves you, because you've worked with the medical director. It's going to get your product written, right? So that's certainly the power of the staff right there. There's also a lot of other things that the staff is involved in. When I say the staff, I'm not talking about just frontline personnel like a nursing, respiratory therapist, medical assistants. It also involves the executives in the C-suite. It involves people in the supply chain. It involves equipment techs. All the people that have the chance to touch your product in some way, whether that be once a year or more with contracting, or every day with the staff. You need to try to have a plan for developing a relationship with them, because that can involve contracting. It can involve not just maybe not the development of protocols, but certainly the implementation of protocols. It can certainly involve consistent utilization of the product or continuation of therapy. If your product needs to be tapered down over time, right, the staff needs to be educated on how to do that. It can certainly involve protecting against adverse events. You don't want something to go wrong with your product because the staff wasn't educated on how to use your product or how to alleviate potential side effects, right? And all this adds up to overall product success, right? So best practices potentially for working with the staff, obviously, is getting to know them, but providing education to them. As we already talked about, medical directors have goals to increase the competency of their staff. If you can provide education that is about the disease state that you're involved with, or the product, or whatever the case may be, the medical device, if you have that, helping the staff to gain that education on a consistent over time, continuing to do this, is real value there. You also need to be honest about the potential for side effects and adverse reaction, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because it creates opportunities. I remember years ago, one of my large accounts, I thought these guys were experts in this medical device I had. And I didn't realize that, while I provided while I provided education to both day shift and night shift on a regular basis, I wasn't able to touch everybody all the time. And again, with staff turnover being what it is, there was the case where this high volume unit had some people on the staff of the night shift that didn't really know how to troubleshoot this medical device correctly. And although it didn't necessarily lead to any adverse patient outcomes, it could have. Right? Thankfully, they were able to identify to me they were having this particular problem. And when I went in and troubleshoot what was happening with the team, I was able to identify that it was just really a lack of of competency because of a lack of education. So I was able to create a series of troubleshooting workshops where I would make things intentionally go wrong with this particular medical device, not while it's on a patient, mind you, but in a controlled training setting, and then have the staff solve those issues on a hands-on manner, right? And this was a wild success that I was able to do because not only did I help them increase their confidence and prevent potential adverse reactions, but I was able to take this throughout the rest of my region with my other hospitals and then share that tip with my counterparts at a national level so other people could implement the same type of troubleshooting workshop and help their hospitals as well too. And again, the bottom line is when the staff is confident with the use of your product, particularly if you're working in critical care units, and particularly if you have a high-risk, low-use medical device or a very high rare disease type specialty pharmaceutical product where it's not used very often, and these are very critically ill patients, it's very important to help the staff be confident in the use of your product because it's going to lead to better patient outcomes and more use of your product. And what ultimately happens here then is you develop what I call a pseudo sales force. Shout out to my old boss years ago, the guy who first hired me in pharmaceutical sales, Kevin Bacon, not the actor, the actual pharmaceutical district manager, who first helped me understand the value of what a pseudo sales force is. And basically what this means is you're educating the staff and making them so confident on identifying patients who could benefit from your product and also how to use the product that they actually kind of sell the product while you're not there. So that's a very, very powerful thing when the staff is able to identify patients for you even when you're not there, because it leads to long-term consistent success, which is what we're talking about. This next one should be obvious, but we'll give it some due diligence because it is often overlooked and it's very easy to overlook. But that is talking about the concept of following through on your promises. You know, I'm going to take a step back here because I think it's important to understand that hospital sales really is a lifestyle. It's not a 9-to-5 office-based specialty job where you're just visiting offices during regular office hours. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I am a big believer in the value of specialty sales. I've done it many times and I really enjoy that too. But hospital sales is a very different animal. And when I say it's a lifestyle, it's because you got to be available at all times. It doesn't mean you have to be on call. I mean, maybe it does, depending on your product, right? If you're on call, that's a whole nother story. But let's just say you're a product that is not necessarily an on-call product, right? But at the same time, you still have to be available at any time if they need you, right? If there is a situation where, especially if you have a critical care product and a hospital doesn't really use your product very often and they need some help because there's a potential new patient, I'm not saying you have to go down to the hospital and be involved in the patient care itself, right? Because that's probably not your opportunity from a compliance standpoint. But you certainly may need to go down there and provide a mini in-service or an urgent in-service, emergency in-service to make sure that the staff is going to use the product, particularly if it's a medical device, particularly if it's a high-risk, low-use medical device, is going to be able to use it safely, right? You also need to be able to provide and be willing to provide education at all times, whether that's the regular day shift staff or the night shift staff, right? It's just a non-traditional times. These lead to opportunities. Very early morning breakfast meetings or night shift training sessions. I already mentioned that troubleshooting workshop, which I discovered on a night shift years ago. Hospital sales really is a lifestyle, and when you embrace it, and you understand that there's real value and opportunity there to consistently get more sales over time and do it in a win-win manner, everybody wins, right? And again, your promises to deliver education or to help them troubleshoot the device if something went wrong, these have an impact on patients' lives, because when you are helping the organization, the hospital, to use your product better, safer, more consistently in the right way, then you're having a positive impact on patients' lives. And isn't kind of that what it's all about, right? So different things that you can do, as I kind of mentioned already, you can provide that consistent education. If something goes wrong, if you have a medical device or there was an adverse reaction, you can identify what that was. Certainly you can report it in a compliant manner so we can all learn together. If there's the opportunity, again, if it's a compliant thing for you to do, to be able to check the equipment, right? If you have medical devices or capital equipment, make sure it's in good working order. Not taking the place of the staff, but just providing another pair of eyes, and with them. If you're able to stock some of the of your product, if depending on what it is. If it's a disposable or something like that, that might be a value add as well too. But the bottom line is your promises also lead to long-term success, not just in that one hospital, but throughout the entire integrated delivery network and throughout the community, as well as in the group purchasing organization or however contracting is done, right? If you're developing relationships and long-term promises that you can fulfill with the contracting team, whether that be in the C-suite or through supply chain, you can come up with some creative contracting, again, in a compliant manner, then you can have long-term success. But it's very important. The bottom line here is don't make promises you're redundant, but it's so important, again, for long-term success. We've got to give due diligence and just make sure that we really understand it, and that is having relationships with everybody. It's more than just the prescribers that you have to have a relationship with in hospital sales, whether that be the person at the front desk or the janitor or the equipment techs. Everybody can help you, whether they can help you from an access standpoint or understanding what's happening from a changing. Maybe there is something negative happening with the hospital. A lot of people are leaving. Maybe the janitor who works in the units knows why that is. Maybe something went wrong with the piece of medical device that you have or the capital equipment. I've learned a lot from the equipment techs over the years, and also been able to get access to a lot of different locations in the hospital in a compliant manner because of my relationships with equipment techs who had a need for me to see a particular area of the hospital where the equipment is stored that I wouldn't have been able to get to on my own, but they needed me to visit to check on something related to the medical device, right? So you can learn a lot from your relationships there. And again, as I already mentioned here, contracting, and again, I have a whole other video about contracting, so make sure you watch that, but contracting is more than just the C-suite, right? Certainly the C-suite signs off on the contract, right? Especially if it's a multi-million-dollar contract, right? But contracting involves the medical directors, it involves people who are going to utilize the products, it involves people maybe in the supply chain, it involves people in the group purchasing organization, or whatever the case may be, depending on that hospital or that system. It could involve multiple hospitals in multiple states, depending on the situation. And where appropriate and in a compliant manner, you need to develop relationships with those people over time, right? This doesn't happen overnight. Hospital sales success does not happen overnight. It happens by consistently working that business plan and developing relationships over time, right? And as far as the relationships go, you'll be surprised how many friends you can make beyond just the prescribers, but people just on the staff that, friendships really make this job more fun. And again, I mentioned hospital sales is like a lifestyle. You need all the friends you can get. All right, so sometimes you gotta be a chameleon, right? So you got to adjust your attire to the audience, right? So if you're doing a contracting discussion with the C-suite or you're doing a presentation, most likely you're going to be in a suit, right? But if you're working inside the units, whether you're in the ER or the critical care units, not that you're going to be involved in patient care, right? I mean, maybe you are depending on the situation if it's some sort of a surgical product that you're dealing with. But you might be involved you might be in the critical care units if you have a medical device or some sort of a high risk of specialty type product, right? And my feeling is, scrubs are appropriate right there, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. Maybe you're doing maybe sort of a device in service, and a polo shirt is more appropriate. Whatever the audience is in, I believe that's what you should be in, right? Because you want to be on the same page. We're trying to develop this win-win partnership, right? We want to be seen as a peer where appropriate, where possible, and so we want to have the same attire as the audience. And let's talk about the scrubs in a little bit more detail, right? So maybe you don't think scrubs are appropriate, or maybe your organization doesn't allow it, or maybe the hospital has a policy where you're not allowed to do that. Obviously, you've got to be compliant with that. But if there's an opportunity, and you're going to be working in the critical care units or inside the hospital, I believe scrubs are a great way to go, because not only is that what your audience is wearing, but you want to be a part of the team. You want to be seen as a part of the team. You want to make your audience feel comfortable. If you're there in a stiff suit, everybody else is in scrubs, and your suit makes you stand out, the audience that you're talking to, whether that be the doctor or the nurses, probably not going to feel very comfortable talking to somebody when everybody's looking at you because you stand out, right? Yeah, maybe you look great in a suit, but you don't want to necessarily look better than your audience, right? You want to be able to have as much time with them as possible, right? You want them to be comfortable. If scrubs allows you to get more time in the unit, by all means, I think you should be wearing scrubs, right? So, and particularly if you are involved with medical devices or capital equipment or something where you're, working in that type of an environment, or you're in the critical care units for extended periods of time, scrubs are a great way to go. I've had lots of wonderful success over the years, and I attribute a lot of it because of the time I get because of wearing scrubs. You also need to make sure that you're compliant with the hospital policies. Every hospital nowadays that I'm involved in usually has some sort of credentialing where they're doing background checks, and you got various badges that you're having to deal and wear with. Wear those badges, right? Because again, we want to be that chameleon. Not that we're trying to hide from anybody, but just that we want to make everybody comfortable so they know, hey, I've been credentialed. I've been vetted by this organization. I'm signing in where appropriate. I am compliant with everything you need to do to be able to work at this organization. And you want to make sure that you have the badges so that if you ever get questioned, you know that they know that you've been vetted. But again, you want to be a part of the team. And however that helps you to do that based on your attire, you need to be the chameleon for this next one as well too, and that is providing value-added services. So what can you do above and beyond that's going to allow you to be more integrated into the hospital team? Again, in a compliant manner. Not that you're working for the hospital, not that you're providing value to the hospital that goes beyond compliance, but just if there's opportunities where you can do it in a compliant manner, what could that involve? Maybe you have a product that's a pharmaceutical pill or something that you might be able to make sure it's stocked, right? Not that you're stocking the shelves, right, but that you're making sure it's stocked and reporting if it's not, right? Maybe there's opportunity for you to, if something went wrong with your medical device, that you can help the team to troubleshoot it. Not that you're the only one that troubleshoots it, but if you can identify or confirm what they suspect it is, if you can check it and confirm it, not while it's on a patient, obviously, and then you can report that in, save them a little bit of time and making sure that you're reporting the right thing in because you're the expert, right? That would be value. If you can periodically check that things, again, if it's capital equipment, medical device, that it's functioning properly, that if it needs service, when is the next service date? Not that you're providing these things, not that you're validating that it's going to necessarily work when they use it on a patient, right? But in a compliant way, if you can just do some checks just to see, and if you identify something's not right, that you can get that unit changed out for something else. There's value there, right? If you can provide that clinical education that I talked about and help the staff to increase its competency, there's great value there. Because a lot of times they got to pay for this types of education, and you're able to provide it as part of the package that goes along with your product. Again, that's real value. If you can do those troubleshooting workshops that I mentioned, right? I mean, we identified a potential adverse situation, and then we were able to turn that into a positive by providing troubleshooting workshops that was able to increase the competency of the staff. If you can work with the medical directors and identify a quality improvement opportunity, I've done quality improvement projects that lasted multiple years that have affected in a positive way multiple regions and actually changed the brand messaging for products in the past because of identifying grassroots quality improvement projects with key opinion leaders, right? Maybe there's something else that I haven't thought of that you thought of, whatever that may be. There is value. And if you can identify what that value is, it becomes a value add that makes the hospital want to partner with the last tip, and that is using the challenger sales method and even going beyond it. So, there's lots of different sales methods that will work within hospital settings. I'm not saying this is the only one by any means, right? This particular one appeals to me, and I didn't create the challenger sales method. You can look this up, right? But the way I was trained on it and the way I kind of use it is really kind of a threefold aspect, and that is teaching, tailoring the message, and taking control of the situation. And don't let the name kind of fool you. It's not as hardcore as maybe it sounds, right? You got to challenge the person. Because as I said, I use a win-win-win approach, and I believe the challenger method can be used in that approach. It is not me versus them. It's us together to achieve our goals. And the first step on that is teaching. How many times have I said throughout this video the importance of education? Whether that's educating about your product or about the disease state or about potential adverse reactions and safety situations, you have to love teaching if you want to be successful in hospital sales. I really enjoy giving presentations, whether it's to small groups of 5 people or whether it's to 500 people. I love being able to give presentations and teaching. Hopefully you do too. The next thing is being able to tailor your message. Everybody's different. There's lots of different sales methods and different kind of personality types of situations. The DISC method is one I really like as well too. But you have to understand the audience that you're talking to and then tailor your message accordingly. Because if you don't tailor the message, it's not going to be well received, and therefore there's no action is going to result from it. The final step is taking control, or I like to think of it as just kind of keeping it real, right? People are going to complain about your product, whether it's the price of the product, or maybe there was, like I said, an adverse reaction situation, or maybe there's something related to a competitive product, or whatever the case may be. There's always going to be complaints. You have to be able to deal with those complaints in a positive manner and understand that there's opportunities to be able to, that can develop from those complaints. But you also have to just kind of keep it real. I got a whole other website way beyond hospital sales and med rep tips in general. And it's called That Helpful Dad, where I provide practical solutions to just real life problems. That's kind of the way I operate in hospital sales too. I like to keep it real, right? I like to just provide, I want to understand what the challenge is, and I want to talk about it to you, and here's what I can do, and here's what I can't do, and here's what we can do to find common ground and find a solution. Now that's a very esoteric way of talking about this, but my point is, let's be real world here. You got a job to do, I got a job to do. Let's find a way to do this together. And when you teach, tailor, and take control of the situation by keeping it real, you can provide you can achieve long-term success in hospital sales because people are going to respect you more, in my opinion. Finally, let's talk about going beyond, right? Long-term success comes from not being afraid of having these discussions, whether it be about competitive products in a compliant manner, whether that be about price to value type discussions. People are going to complain about the price. You got to change that around to understanding what is the real value that the product is providing, whether that's helping them from a competitive standpoint, helping them to achieve patient outcomes, save time, whatever the case may be. There is something that your product is doing that goes beyond just its price. We're going to make sure that the key opinion leaders and the stakeholders understand that. If you can provide some sort of a total care service plan, I don't know what your product may be, but if you have a medical device and you can provide some sort of a service package or tech type package, or you hook it up with the EMR system, there's real value right there. If you can provide emergency deliveries, right? This kind of total care going beyond just delivering the product, but providing something extra, there is extra value there that's going to lead to long-term success and staving on off the competition. Flexible contracting and creative contracting, if you're going to be hardcore on contracting and just say this is the price, take it or leave it, you might have success in the short term because they don't have another option, but in the long term, you're not going to make a lot of friends. If you can come up with creative contracting, flexible contracting, changing the terms and conditions in some way to be able to appeal to the hospital or their system, providing a multi-year contract, providing different price options depending on utilization, all those types of things can create a win-win situation. So we need to be able to think outside the box because every hospital is different and they want to partner with you. If you've got them using the product, they want to continue to use the product. Find a way to make that happen, right? Be creative in a compliant manner, and you can have a win-win result. All right, so we're finishing up here. Did we cover everything? Obviously not. This is, as it says here, just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to the story. I'd love to continue the conversation with you. I hope that you'll connect with me, whether that be at my website, That Helpful Dad. I'll put a link down there, or on Twitter, or on LinkedIn. Let's stay connected. If I've missed something that you think is critically important, by all means, put it in the comments, or whether that be on this video, on YouTube, or on my website, whatever the case may be. If you like this video, make sure you do share it with others, and make sure you tell me what I missed. And again, if you want to continue the conversation deeper for your organization in some way, make sure you get in touch with me so we can try to help each other out. God bless you and have a great day.